Awesome. Good to see you guys. Love you. Woo! Awesome. Yes, that's right, Sandy. It is awesome. It is great. And we'll be having a small dancing introduction by Sandy tonight to get us started. Leading off of last week's message from her. That's right. That's right. So cool stuff, guys. Before I jump into this, just want to share a quick little fun thing I heard about. So I think if you guys remember a couple of weeks ago, my dad was sharing that we heard that Justin Bieber and a couple other people in the secular music realm were actually turned their lives over to Jesus. They're now using their gifting and their ministry to be able to impact the secular world around them. And that is something that just really ignites my fire, just to see that the promises that God says over his children, he says, you know, this is your destiny, this is your purpose, and it can't be thwarted. And so that was really cool. And then something kind of along those lines, for those of you that probably follow the media and social media, you probably already know what I'm about to say. Just was really cool. We all know Tim Tebow is a quarterback, and yeah, Adam already knows this. Was the quarterback for the Eagles, and now is a baseball player. Well, he was actually just in the news for praying over somebody who had a seizure after the game. And he prayed for him, and he got healed. And the news reports went buck wild, saying Tim Tebow prayed for a guy who had a seizure and resuscitated him, and it was like a miracle. And actually, it's funny. A couple of commentators are saying, because unbeknownst to me, this is like his second time he's done that. And they said he's in line for sainthood. He's done 2 miracles. So that was so encouraging to me. I just want to encourage you guys with that. You know, let's not keep us from like we've been talking about. There's not this us-them mentality. There's not we're the church and they're the outside. Let's just continually push in to say, God, you are moving so awesome. And I need to I'm being challenged to open my eyes to people that I maybe didn't think highly of, or people that I didn't think so much of, and that God is using them so mightily. They're actually getting in the news for impacting the kingdom of God. And I'm like, oh, so good. So was that exciting? Was that encouraging? Oh, it's so good. Cool. So, all right, that's it. No. So anyway, that's pretty cool. So tonight I have a really cool message, and before we get started, I want to ask Holy Spirit just to do a work in us tonight. Holy Spirit, we just come before you right now. We come with excitement. We come with an attitude of joy to be in your presence. I ask right now that you would make our hearts just open, with an open connection to hear you speak to our hearts in a way that goes beyond physical words and language. We give that to you in Jesus' name. Amen. Prior to tonight, God gave me a picture of an illustrated picture that I won't go into detail until later if God asks me to. But the message of it was that God wants to restore identity to somebody or some people or all of us tonight. And so if that's you, if you feel like you're lost in your identity, you're being swirled about, don't feel defined, you feel like you're not fitting in, you feel like it's all a big mix-up of your personality and who you are, God really pointedly said that he wants to come in and he wants to form you, and he wants to give you that identity. And that's something he can only give, and he wants to do that tonight for either somebody. So I hope that speaks to somebody tonight as we go on. Something that, this is really exciting, because sometimes I like titles for myself, but I kind of wanted to share it with you tonight. It's Master or My Father. And how I want to go into this is, God showed me that I used to view him as my master and not as my father. And that was addressing my heart, because in my mind, I always knew that he was my heavenly father. But in my heart, I wasn't connecting with him as my father. My heart and the way I was walking out my life was in a relationship between a servant and a master. And I feel that there's something God wants to address tonight with that relationship that maybe other people might have, where your heart relationship is connected to your father as a master, and your heart is not connected to your father as a real father. just to kind of give you a little background to it, as God was showing me that this is something that my heart was believing, it came down to where I was a person, when I would read scriptures like the talents, where you had the wicked servant, or you had prophets where Jesus said to them, "You prophesy in my name, but I still don't know who you are." I felt so convicted under that and felt, God, I'm so scared that I'm going to be that person that's going to be so deceived in thinking that I was with you, that I was doing your things, that I was walking under your ways, but in the end it was for naught, and I was deceived because I actually didn't have a relationship with you. And that fear of that certainty that, am I really guaranteed that relationship with the Father, my Heavenly Father, eternity? Can I really be guaranteed that relationship and that promise that He's given me? And my result to that was fear, because I couldn't let that truth sink in, that I'm forever His, that He holds me and that I'm in Him. I wouldn't let that truth sink deep in me, and I wouldn't allow myself to believe that. So as a reaction to it, I decided to have fear. And in order to control my fear, I started by acting in legalism, where when I would be reading certain things in the Bible, unbeknownst to me, I start taking all those guidelines, all those rules about being kind, or just doing simple things as Ten Commandments or whatever have you, and making sure, am I spending my quiet time with God in the morning? Am I worshiping with my real heart? Am I really giving my time to God? Am I tithing? It was about a pharisaical type of lifestyle where, am I doing the right things that keeps me in good standing with the Father, my Heavenly Father? So I instantly believed the enemy's lies that I have to perform, I have to do this and look like a good Christian and be a good Christian to God, because He wants to see that from me. And He wants to see my commitment to Him. Because in that commitment, then I feel guaranteed that in the end, I am going to be said I was His. But God challenged me and my thought patterns by saying that really it's the choice of love that is my guarantee. And that love is my guarantee, and not it's love in two ways. It's His love towards me, and it's my love towards Him that's the seal. That the covenant between me and Him wasn't and isn't based on what I'm doing or how committed I think I am, but it's sealed by my decision to love Him and His decision to love me. The cool thing is that God says that He created us to live with certainty. And there's a verse I want to bring you guys to in that. So if we look at John 10, chapter 10, verse 10. It reads, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But I have come that you may have life and have it to the full." The Passion Translation says, "But I came to give you everything in abundance, more than you expect, life in its fullness until you overflow." And I also kind of want to substitute that word life for saying, I've come to give you hope and that you would have hope to the full. And it's so cool that God's promise to me and to all of us is that He's guaranteed for us to have hope. And our hope of eternity, our hope of having that covenant with the Father is so central to our belief system, is so central to our lives as what we call Christians, but really as children of God. And if the enemy can attack that hope, that there's no way I can feel certain, because that's the lie that the enemy constantly tries to give us, is that I can't really be certain. I have to do something in my own strength. I have to strive somehow, because there's no way I can be really certain. And God absolutely botches that lie and says, no, I've come to give you life so that you can have it to the full. And I don't want you to live in a vacillation, because my perfect love for you is casting out that fear of, am I really in you? because he hates fear, because there's no room for it. There's no reason for it, because he's such a perfect love towards me. And if I choose to actually believe that there is such a thing as this awesome, perfect love from my dad, then I don't have a reason to fear. But it really comes down to am I going to challenge myself to say, God, am I really going to believe that your love is that good? Am I really going to believe that your love is that awesome and that amazing for me that I don't have to fear about striving? And that's what I was challenged with, is my belief of God and his love for me strong enough to conquer my fear that I have to do something? Can I live my life 100% committed to the fact that my covenant with God and my choice for love between him is enough between us and for me? So good. It's so cool. When we look into the Gospels and we look into Jesus, he constantly talked about his relationship between us and the kingdom as a father. If you look, he never once said, and my king in heaven or my master in heaven. He always said, our Father and my Father. Every single time that Jesus talked to us, he always modeled the example of relationship. He always modeled an example of the Father. And why would I want to consider any other relationship besides the one that Jesus was trying to constantly give to his disciples? And sometimes what Jesus would say is sometimes a little hard to hear because it sometimes addresses our root. And he says, if you obey me, then if you love me, then you'll obey me. All these lines of, trying to direct our hearts so that we're in line with him. But the truth still remains that my relationship with him is one of a father, and that my life is made to have relationships, but not a relationship of a master and a slave. That one was broken because Jesus came. If we look in John chapter 1, and if we go to verses 12 and 13, yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. That's so good. It's so cool that God says that it was my will that you're my child. It wasn't, my standing with God is not based on a human's decision. Some other translations say it's not based off of a father's decision, to have a child. My relationship with him is one that he chose me. And that just rocks my world that, my relationship with God is not based on anybody else's choosing, but it's based on his choosing of me. And if we look in John chapter 15, in verses 14, he says, you are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants. You see, he no longer calls us servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you may go and bear fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. So we have it right there. And Passion Translation totally lights it up. So, again, we're in chapter 15 of John, verses 14. I have never called you servants. So I think, the NIV says, I no longer call you servants. The Passion, he's like, no, wait a second. I've never called you a servant, because it's retroactive what God does. He says, I've never called you a servant, because a master does not confide in his servants, and a servant doesn't always understand what the master is doing. But I call you, this is awesome, but I call you my most intimate friends. For I reveal to you everything that I heard from my Father. You didn't choose me, but I have chosen you and commissioned you to go into the world to bear fruit. So good. The Father gives us identity. The Father gives me identity. If I believe that God is my master, then actually I can't receive any identity he wants to give me, because only the Father, in the natural and in my supernatural life, only the Father gives me my identity. So my Father says, I'm not calling you a servant, I'm calling you my son. A master doesn't have that choice. A master gives me a label, so I constantly am in flux between labels. Okay, am I in this standing with my master? Am I in this standing? But God says, no. I give you a label that's your identity, because I give identity. And I call you my most intimate friends, and I have chosen you, because only a father can choose somebody to be his son. And that's just like so awesome to me. And I think that just is such a compelling truth that needs to sink deep down in our hearts, that God has chosen me, and that if I am going to be brave enough to choose to decide to believe all the truth that God says, then that means I can be a reciprocant of his identity that he wants to give me. Because if I believe that my dad is a good dad, then I'm going to believe the things he wants to say about me. In Matthew 7, he says, if you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? Because our God is a good God. He gives us those good gifts. And in John 16, he talks about saying in verse 27, no, the Father himself loves you because you have loved me and have believed that I came from God. In the Passion Translation, it says, and I will not need to ask the Father on your behalf, for you'll ask him directly because of your new relationship with me. For the Father tenderly loves you because you love me and believe that I've come from God. I have an ability to talk directly to my Father. Only a son or a daughter has that awesome, awesome privilege to get to speak directly to their father. A master and a servant, they don't have that relationship. Only a father and a child can have a relationship where I speak directly to him. And, you know, I can just see God in heaven. When he's chosen us, he just has this huge smile on his face. And he's just like, come on, let's just do a relationship. He's like, steps forward, just says, come on, I want to just have our relationship. I want to embrace you. I want to just talk directly to you. Jesus died, and I love Jesus, but he died so that you and me could be together. We don't need to have a space. We don't need to have a priest. We don't need to have a wall between us. Amen. He just so loves, I love that. He tenderly loves me. He tenderly loves me. So good. It was a really neat example in John chapter 1. You guys can turn there. In John chapter 1, verses 35, to give you a little backstory, John was talking to the Pharisees and a couple other people in Jerusalem saying, you know, I'm not the one that you're looking for. Jesus is coming, and I'm not that person. And just in verse 35, you'll see there's a shift in the paragraphs in the Bible. And basically what happens is John has baptized Jesus and sees Jesus walking by, and he calls out saying, guys, look, there's the anointed one. There's the Lamb of God. There is the one that I've been talking about this whole time. And it's so cool because right as he said that, two of John's little buddies, his disciples, actually, they're like, all right, great, appreciate you because we're going after him now. And they leave John and they go straight for Jesus. That's so cool. I love it because they're like, we know that this guy is the one that you've been trying to tell us about. We love you, John, but you know what? You've been telling us that there's somebody better. You've been telling us that this is the one that we're supposed to have a relationship with. And that's so cool because John is the transition between the law and relationship. He was that person. He was the last person to represent to his disciples saying, guys, look, I'm the last person of the law. I'm the last person to be here. I'm telling you that, you know, I'm like kind of the last stand of that idea of a master-servant relationship. He's like that last remnant of it. He's saying, guys, look, this way of doing things is going to be no more, but there's somebody greater coming. And once that greater person was there, instantly, disciples said, great, we're transferring from that relationship of a master to a slave, instantly to a father and son relationship. And they instantly ran after him, and they actually came up behind him like kind of like a puppy, like this, and just like, hey, why are you guys following me? And they're like, well, John told us to go after you. Like, aren't you? He's like, yeah. It's like, okay, well then let's do life. Let's do this. You're like, yes, come on. So it's really neat because a little bit later down, Andrew actually goes and finds his brother, Peter, and says, hey, Peter, guess what? We found the one that John's been talking about this whole time. And so Peter's like, well, that's awesome because this is the new covenant. This is awesome. Let's go for it. So he brings Peter to him, and it's so cool. Jesus is so awesome. He says the moment he meets Peter, he looks at Peter and he says, I love you, and you have a new name. And it's like, okay, that's cool, neat fact. You know, he gets his name Peter. Woo, yeah, cool. But God instantly dropped in. That's what he does. When we encounter the Father, he gives us our identity. Amen. When Peter met Jesus, he received his identity. Jesus was the Father. And he was representing the Father. And as Peter approached him, he wanted to join him. He said, welcome to the new covenant. I'm going to give you a new identity. And isn't that just so cool that there's such an illustration of that? John is like that representation of like our earthly parents. He's representing, he's like, I'm wonderful and I'm great and you love me and that's awesome. But there's one even greater. He's our real Father. And I want you to get to experience him. I want you to have a relationship with him. And that's what Jesus was all about. He said, I'm coming down here to earth. He said, guys, my Father is amazing. My Father rocks your world. My Father just loves you. And I just want you to get to know my Father because, oh my gosh, when you get to know my Father, it's just going to blow up. And when you get to know that my Father is not a taskmaster, but when you know that my Father is the one who's into relationship, that his whole life, his whole way of being is all based on relationship and love, then that's what I want for you. I want you to know that love. I want you to know that identity that my Father wants to give you. Because he doesn't just want me to be an intermediary. He wants to have that personal connection. Because he doesn't need me to talk for you anymore. Because I'm here so that you can have a relationship with him. I just want to speak a little bit more on talking about that our hope is sure. Because sounds so amazing, but so hard. It's so hard. And it's a transforming walk for me too, because I can't say I completely 100% own it, because this is my life and I'm walking it through. God's now given me the revelation, and I've broken off the lies of me believing that I was under a covenant of taskmaster with my Father. And so yes, I've broken that off. But now I'm in that walk where I'm trying to walk, okay, every day. Was that action acting out of a taskmaster mindset? Or am I starting my day with my Heavenly Father in relationship? Because honestly, that looks different. Because that does look different. And I'm learning that relationship looks a lot different than I sometimes think it's supposed to be. And it's always for the better, but it's something that it takes me to pursue it though. Because relationship doesn't just happen, especially if I was in a position where I was believing lies, if I was believing things that weren't true about my relationship with God, I'm having to relearn what that looks like. But that's okay. And now in that process, I need to have the promise that it's genuine, that this isn't going to be false. And if we look in Romans, God reiterates this point to us. And in the Passion Translation, I just love it. It says in Romans chapter 5, verse 5, "And this hope is not a disappointing fantasy, because we can now experience, this is so good, we can now experience the endless love of God cascading into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who lives in us." Because this is a hope is not a disappointing fantasy. And once I choose to believe that this hope is not a disappointing fantasy and say, God, I want to know what this looks like to have a relationship with you. God, I'm saved, and yes, that's great, but I want to know and experience this endless love that you have for me, this relationship that you have for me. And I need to give up the lie that this is a disappointing fantasy for me to believe that this can be that true, this can be that awesome. In Isaiah, it talks about, can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has born? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. He loves us so much. And his word in one way just wants to call out and cry to us and tell us, this is not a disappointing fantasy. Even if your mother would forget you, I don't forget you. Like we've been talking about, he knows the very hairs on our heads. Yeah, he knows how many heads we have. We have one. And that thought's been running through my mind. It's been so cool. Like he said, he's counting the ones that are dropping out of our head. Like literally, I'm standing in the bathroom in the shower. I'm like, I'm fixing it. I'm making myself look awesome. And getting my awesome do on, right? And as I'm doing, I'm like, oh, there's one. I'm like, oh, he already counted it. I'm like, oh, so what are we at, God? And that's it's because it's so true. Because he's so invested in us, and I want to know what that looks like. It's like, God, I want to know what that looks like, just to understand and just to grasp that you have such an endless love for me, that your hope is not even disappointing. Just to know that you just absolutely go after me, and that you don't desire anything else of me as a striving, but you only desire love from me, that you only desire a covenant of love from me. And it's just like, God, I want to know that. I want to walk in that. I want to know what it means to just walk in a love relationship with you, to make that choice of love, because love has a lot of grace. That's the big difference between a master and a father. A master doesn't give grace, but a father gives grace. And that's why love is so awesome, because if I'm in a master, there's no grace. I have to perform. But when it's my father and there's love, then the grace for obedience exists. And the cool thing is that out of love, obedience naturally follows. It's not, and that's the cool thing that I'm realizing, is that it's not obedience and then love. It's love first and then comes obedience. Yeah. And the cool thing is that they're not A and B. Obedience is actually a result of love. It's a result of love. It's a byproduct. It can't be fashioned without love. So I can obey, and then I can try and love, but that's going to be a real tough road. And God didn't design me to live by obeying and then trying to love at the same time. God designed me and only wants for me to love him, because as I'm loving him, obedience is going to be naturally following. And sometimes I might ask myself, well, God, that's kind of weird, because there's some things that I'm not really finding easy to obey you on. But as I continue to pursue and push into loving God more, just for example, if I continue wanting to press into love my spouse more, or love my brother more, or love my friend more, it's going to be natural that I'm going to want to start doing things that, not to please them, but because if that's something that they want and something that they desire, I would naturally just start doing those things, because the more captivated in love I become with them, they're the only opinion that matters. And in a worldly sense, that can get kind of nasty and dangerous, but when it's between me and my Father, when I'm absolutely so captivated and loved by him, then obedience becomes natural. And I'm not concerned with, God, did I do this today? Did I do A, B, and C? Am I working on this enough for you? Because as I just search in my position of love and relationship with him, that obedience is going to come naturally. And I love an illustration of that is in John 23, it says, loving me empowers me to obey my word. And my Father will love you so deeply that we will come to you, we is speaking Jesus and the Father, that we will come to you and make you our dwelling place. So God is so interested in saying, guys, just love me, because I love you. So just love me. Your love for me is going to empower you to obey me. And by you walking in that awesome standing, I can't help but want to be dwelling with you. I can't help but be with you. There's no striving involved. Remember when Peter had disowned Jesus, and they're getting the Great Commission from God. And he said, the question that Jesus had for Peter was just, do you love me? Peter didn't necessarily obey him in that sense. He wasn't really he didn't really do a good thing. But Jesus was just concerned with, do you love me, Peter? And that's the same question he just asks us every time we fall down. He's saying, God, do you love me? Yeah. Do you love me? Because the obedience is going to come. He's like, yes, obedience is great, but just love me. And do you love me? Because that's really all I'm concerned about. Because that's the most genuine thing. That's the seal. That's the said and done. The obedience we can work on. But the love, that's the seal deal. Then we work on this together. Because look, if you're really, just ask yourself, if I'm really loving God, then it's going to be normal that I don't want to do those things. I don't have to have that contention for it. Because the more I focus on just, God, what do you say about me, God? What do you even say about me? So, I want to love you, God. So what do you tell me about me? Who are you? Who am I? Let me learn what that's like, because naturally that's all going to come from it anyway. Woo! That's right. So good, so good. I don't know. This is funny. As I was preparing this, God just kept on bringing up John. I'm like, wow, I don't know why John, but hey, God wrote, so I'm like, let's go with John. So if we're looking again in John chapter 1, verses 16, he says, and this is Passion, it says, and now out of his fullness we are fulfilled, and from him we receive grace heaped upon more grace. Like I was saying, a master doesn't give grace. Only a father gives grace. And so the reason I'm saying this to you is that if you're finding yourself, as I'm speaking, or if the Holy Spirit's trying to show you that you're living in a heart attitude where you're viewing God as your taskmaster, in a sense, I'm giving you that compelling, like, guys, look at this. When we choose to get rid of our taskmaster mindset, then we receive our identity from our Father. And then we receive grace from the Father. So all those things that we really want and we're actually really desiring, we get when we decide to say, God, I'm really going to be brave. I'm going to be brave and trust that this is who you're saying you are. And I want to receive my identity. I want to receive the grace that you're giving me. I love, because my dad's been saying a couple of these quotes, and they paint the picture so well from Bill Johnson, and Bill Johnson said them. We are saved when we believe in him, but we are transformed when we realize that he believes in us. You know, because we're saved, and that's perfect, and that's awesome, that's good, because that's really what it's about. But I would hate to live my life not in a relationship or not learning what it's like to experience God, and then get to heaven and realize what I missed out on. Because my transformation takes place when I realize that God is actually believing in me. And that I get rid of a religious mindset. I curse the generation of religiosity that's been trying to speak to me. And I break that curse and I say, no, I'm going to stand in relationship. And I don't know how that's going to look like, but God, I need to start asking you questions. I want to start venturing in relationship with you. I'm going to start asking God, what do you talk about to me? And so it's not about, okay, you know, what t-shirt am I supposed to wear? How much am I supposed to tithe? But relationship starts with saying, okay, God, you know, just who are you? And what makes you tick? What do you like? What do you love? What do you love about me? And seriously, be bold. Ask him, God, what do you love about me? You know, what do you think is cool about me? You know, what do you say about me? Because I bet you some of you guys might even be surprised what he says. You're going to be like, you really think that? And because that's where a relationship starts. Because when you realize what he thinks about me, and when I realize what I think about him, and as we get that going, it's like that's when the stuff really happens. That's when my life starts changing, because I'm like, wait a second, I'm not afraid. Yeah. Fear has no hold, because my hope is sure, so I don't have to be afraid of losing it. My hope is genuine. It's not a fantasy. I can walk boldly and deeply in my Father's love. So good. So I wanted to just say this real quick, because 5 minutes. Love it. So, when I was reading, there's a book called, oh boy, somebody's going to have to help me. It's the Power of the Transformed Mind. There you go. Yeah. All right. So, Power of Transformed Mind. There's a part where Bill Johnson talks about desires, and you'll see how this ties in a second. Actually, the word desire. Actually, we break it out. The word D of desire actually stands for of, and the half part desire actually stands for Father. So the word actually stands for of the Father. So desires that we have are placed there because of our Father. And sometimes we misuse those desires and start training them and facilitating them in ways that don't honor the Father. But the desires that God puts in us are from him, and are meant to channel and to give us creativity. And that's the funny thing, because when I'm a master, I don't have creativity. I just constantly do what the master tells me to do, and I don't have creativity when I'm walking out my life. But God, I think, also wants to challenge us tonight to understand that desires he's given us are not just meant for us just to sit on, just like the talents. I don't just sit on my talents. God says, I've given you desire, and I want you to run with it, because I'm your Father. And if you know that I love you so much, then you're not afraid what your creativity is going to look like, because you're just excited to push into that desire, because you're saying, God, this is like a pool. Like love's a pool. I can splash around in it. I can flop around all these things because I'm not going to get hurt. It's all awesome. It's all perfect. So love's a pool, and I can be creative in that pool. I can just go crazy and do all these things. I can pursue the desires of the kingdom of heaven, because it's going to reach something, and it's going to actually break into a supernatural realm. It's going to bring victory in ways that maybe I wasn't even aware of. And I think God was just challenging me that he wants to challenge all of us to really think outside the box. that when we understand God as a master, then that's when fear, like I was talking about, fear instantly comes in. And fear is one of those biggest hindrances to creativity. And honestly, I think a lot of people sometimes say, I'm not creative, I'm not this, all these painting people, they're so creative, I'm not that. Honestly, I think every single person actually is gifted by God to be extremely creative beyond what you would give yourself credit for. And the people that you deem are actually creative are the people who actually were bold enough to practice it. Yep. Every single person is creative. The difference between the person who looks more creative and the person who doesn't look as creative is the difference that they chose to practice it out. Yep. And I dare you, if you would dare to practice out some of the desires and some of the creativity that God's asking you to do, you'd actually consider yourself a pretty creative person because God doesn't create non-creative people. Yeah. He is a creator. And just like the Lego movie, he built some people that know how to create things. He gives us an open mind that we can just create awesome things and just manifest them right there. Yeah. So I love this illustration. I just wanted to share this here, right? So when I was in high school, I was in high school. And I love this. We were in I think junior. I was my junior year, right? So my one teacher is like, okay, I want to do letters of recommendation for you guys. And we're like, oh, that's so nice. So she's like, I want you guys to write down some attributes of yourself. And some good things to mention are that you're a leader, you have integrity, you think outside the box. And so all of us in the class, we start making a list of the things that we feel describe us, and so that she can write a letter of recommendation for us when we want to go to a career or something like that. Well, my friend, when he did this, I almost wanted to throw my paper away, right? So this is what he did. He didn't write anything down. This is what he did, okay? And this is a good illustration, I think, for the kind of creativity that God asks us to have. So he did this. I was like, okay, that's it. That's it. I can think outside the box, but you can't read it? Okay, so he drew a box. He drew a dot, and he put an arrow to it, and he said, this is where I think. And it's just like, that's it, man. I'm like, and that honestly, that wrecked me. I'm like, I thought I was so cool and write down my, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. Oh, it's so great. Dang. I was like, shoot, man. He showed me up. I thought outside the box, he'd get the job. If I saw that in a resume, he'd get the job. That's what I thought. And it's so cool because then there's another picture that God, I was going to show it to you guys tonight, but the computer wasn't working, unfortunately. So this is what the picture was. So it was like this, right? And then the box had a whole bunch of arrows coming off of it. And one of the arrows that were coming off of it, we'll just say it was this one. And it had fear on it. Now this is a secular, diagram, but it was meant for a motivational speaker. And they had a box and they were talking about thinking outside the box. And there was fear, there was rules, there was, loneliness and all these things. And fear was one of them. And that's so true, is that one of the biggest hindrances to us thinking creatively is the fear factor. Fear of, am I in relationship with God? Or fear of, is this a really creative idea? But that's where you got to break it down, guys. That's where we have to break down the wall and say, okay, I choose to not be fearful. Because the moment that I choose not to be fearful, instantly I tap into the Creator. Because the Creator creates many creators. And we are made to be creative. We are made to set the world on fire, to set a standard. And so I encourage you guys to really, this is what becomes possible when we start understanding that we're in relationship with the Father. And I want to leave you guys with this one quote that Albert Einstein said. And it was so good. It's I sometimes wonder if Albert Einstein was a Christian, right? So we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. It absolutely requires a transformation of my mind. If I'm going to choose to live my life differently, if I want to choose to understand my relationship with God as a father, then I have to change the stinking thinking, as Shannon would say, that got me thinking otherwise. That got me thinking that I was in a master-slave relationship. In order for me to start thinking outside the box, I have to start thinking, okay, why am I thinking inside a box? Because the thinking I'm using to create the problem is the thinking that I have to get rid of, because I need to transform my mind. Because when my mind's transformed to understand that, that's when life changes. So, awesome! Woo! So, before we send out, I just want to pray that over us. So, Heavenly Father, we just release right now a spirit of breaking free, a spirit of breakthrough, Father. Thank you for just breaking through our walls of fear. I just declare a ceasing and a breaking down of those walls right now in every single one of our hearts. We just are excited and we come in boldly looking forward to relationship with you, Father. I ask you would just convict our hearts tonight if we are having a heart attitude of master and slave, that you would break that in us tonight, that we would walk and discover what it means to be in relationship with you as our lovely and awesome Father. Amen.